I am Jocelyn Callahan, 74 years old, and I wake each day in Savannah with the same dull ache in my knees. The mornings are slow, the joints in my hands stiff from arthritis, but habit carries me forward. I shuffle into the kitchen long before anyone else is awake putting on the kettle for tea. The house is quiet then, and in those early hours I can almost imagine Jesse, my husband, still moving about adjusting his tie, humming to himself before heading off to the shipyard. Those memories are the only warmth that carries me through a place that no longer feels like home. Kira, my daughter, and her husband Nathan took me in after Jesse passed. At least that is the story we tell neighbors, though. The truth is more complicated. They like to say they gave me shelter. What they really gave me was a room at a price. I pay rent like some unwanted boarder. They remind me often that electricity, water, and groceries cost money. I sit at the breakfast table with my tea listening as Kira counts the bills aloud, her voice sharp like knives. Nathan chimes in from the hallway, always quick to point out how much hotter or colder the thermostat has been. They act as if the flick of a switch on a lamp or the running of a faucet comes straight from their pockets. I carry my oatmeal bowl back to the sink, careful not to leave a mess. Arthritis makes even small motions heavy, and the clink of the spoon in the dish seems louder than it should be. Kira sighs as if the sound itself offends her. Nathan clears his throat in a way that tells me I should retreat. I move slowly down the hall to the small room that has become my corner of this house, a space lined with my things boxed away like relics. I sit on the bed, rubbing the ache in my knees, and I wonder when a mother became a tenant. The truth is, I own this house, though no one but me and one man at the bank knows it. Years ago, after Jesse died, the life insurance came through. It was not much compared to what people imagine, but when I added it to the money Jesse had hidden away from years at the shipyard, it was enough. I bought the house outright. The deed was mine, though I never told Kira or Jerry, my older son. If they had known, they would have drained me dry. I let them believe I was simply surviving, grateful for a roof. It was easier that way. Pretending gave me peace, even if it meant swallowing my pride. Emily is the only one who breaks through the bitterness. She is 20, Jesse's favorite granddaughter, though he never lived to see her grow into the kind young woman she has become. She sits with me on the porch when the evening cools, asking about my childhood, laughing at stories of simpler times. She sneaks me cookies when Kira says sugar is wasteful, and she listens without judgment. Her presence is the thin thread that holds my heart together. Still, most days pass heavy. The walls echo with Kira's clipped voice, with Nathan's measured disapproval. They talk about me like an expense, not a mother. I pretend not to hear, but every word lands deep. Sometimes I sit in my room at night with Jesse's photograph in my lap. I whisper to him that I am holding on, that I have kept the secret safe. I tell him the house he worked so hard to help me secure still belongs to us, even if no one else knows it. Silence has been my shield for years. It is easier to nod, to write the checks, to endure the sighs and the rolling eyes. Every time I think of speaking up, I imagine the storm it would unleash. Better to bear the weight quietly, I tell myself. Better to avoid the fight. Yet silence costs me something too. It strips pieces of my dignity day by day. I wonder if Jesse would be proud of my patience or disappointed in my restraint. I fall asleep most nights with that question circling. I have learned that sometimes survival is not about speaking, but about waiting. Waiting until the right moment. Waiting until silence is no longer a shield, but a weapon. Until then, I fold my hands, rub my aching joints, and tell myself tomorrow will be just another day in a house that feels borrowed, even though the truth lies locked in my heart. Dinner that evening began with the same brittle silence that often filled the dining room. The clatter of plates was the only sound, until Kira's voice cut through like a blade. She announced that household costs had gone up and I would need to pay an extra $400 each month. She said it as if it were a business transaction, her tone sharp and final. My fork paused halfway to my mouth, and for a moment I thought I had misheard her. Nathan leaned back in his chair, his arms folded. He added in his calm, deliberate way that nothing in life was free. His eyes fixed on me as if I were an expense line on a balance sheet, not his wife's mother. The words carried no warmth, only the cold edge of judgment. My face burned as I tried to keep my voice steady, reminding them that I already gave $2,000 for a single room and meals that were hardly more than scraps. Kira's expression tightened, and her voice rose. She accused me of not appreciating the roof over my head. She said I was lucky to be here, that people my age usually ended up in nursing homes. I felt the weight of the words pressed down on me, heavier than the food on the table. I tried to explain that I had carried my share, that I asked for nothing more than respect, but the room felt like a courtroom where the verdict was already decided. Finally, Kira stood, her hand slamming against the table hard enough to rattle the glasses. She shouted that if I could not pay more, I should pack my things and get out. Her words echoed in the room long after she stormed off. Nathan remained seated, his gaze steady, as if to confirm that her ultimatum was not open for debate. I sat frozen, the food on my plate untouched, my hands trembling slightly in my lap. Later that night, in the stillness of my room, I sat on the edge of the bed with Jesse's photograph in my hands. His smile in that picture was steady and kind, the same smile that had carried me through decades of struggle. I remembered him telling me that money could buy many things, but it should never be allowed to erase dignity. Tears blurred my vision as I whispered that I had tried to hold on, that patience had been my shield for too long. The house was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator down the hall. I traced Jesse's face with my fingers and felt something stir inside me. It was grief, yes, but mixed with something harder, sharper. A thought I had pushed away for years began to take shape. Maybe it was time to turn the tables. Maybe silence had done its part, and the next move would be mine. The morning after Kira's ultimatum, I slipped my old address book from the drawer and found a number I had once tucked away. David Harper, a local real estate agent, had left his card years ago after a neighborhood gathering. My hands shook as I dialed, but my voice was steady when I asked if he would meet me privately. He sounded polite, even casual, until I revealed I was not a tenant, as many believed, but the actual owner of the house. There was a pause on the line before he agreed to meet, his tone shifting to one of surprise and respect. We met the next afternoon in a quiet cafe on River Street. The air smelled of roasted beans and rain on the pavement outside. David sat across from me, his notepad open, his eyes searching my face for certainty. I explained the situation plainly. My children believed they had taken me in, but the truth was I had purchased the house outright after Jesse passed, combining his life insurance and his savings from the shipyard. I had kept the ownership hidden for years to protect what little piece I had left. David listened without judgment, though his brows furrowed at the weight of the deception. He told me the market was strong. A house like mine in Savannah's historic district could sell for more than $850,000. The number hung between us, larger than any I had spoken aloud in years. My chest tightened with both fear and a strange release. I told him I wanted a quick sale, discreet, without Kira or Nathan suspecting until it was too late. He explained the paperwork, his pen moving across forms that seemed to carry the gravity of an entire life's decision. When it was my turn, I took the pen. My fingers trembled, but my gaze did not falter. Signing my name felt like stepping out of the shadows. It was not revenge I tasted in that moment, but freedom. The cafe's chatter seemed to fade as the ink spread across the page, binding me to a choice that had been waiting inside me for far too long. David shook my hand with quiet firmness and promised confidentiality. That evening, I began to pack small things into a suitcase. Family photographs, Jesse's watch, a few worn paperbacks. Emily caught me folding a sweater and asked softly if I was going somewhere. I touched her cheek and said I was making a choice that was long overdue. Her eyes searched mine with unspoken questions, but she nodded. In that moment, I felt the first flicker of peace in years. The knock at the door came just after 10 o'clock on a gray morning. Kira opened it with her usual impatience and froze when she saw David Harper standing there in a tailored suit holding a folder. He introduced himself politely, then explained that he was the realtor managing the property. Kira frowned confusion twisting into annoyance as he calmly informed her that the house had been sold and the family had 30 days to vacate. Nathan stepped in from the hallway, his jaw tight, his arms folded across his chest. He demanded to know what kind of scam this was. Kira insisted there had to be a mistake. She said this was her home, that her mother was only living there because she and Nathan had taken her in. Her voice cracked as she tried to mask her rising panic. David remained professional, explaining that the deed of sale was valid and the closing date was already set. The air in the living room grew heavy, like a storm pressing against the windows. Kira's voice rose sharper and more frantic as she accused him of targeting the wrong address. Nathan's face darkened, his words clipped with anger, accusing David of fraud. Just as the shouting swelled, the phone rang on the table. Kira snatched it up, her hand trembling. Jocelyn's name lit up the screen. Her voice when she spoke was calm and steady, a sharp contrast to the chaos in the room. She told them there was no mistake. The house had always been hers. She had bought it years ago after Jesse's death, using the insurance money and his hidden savings. For years, she had allowed them to believe she was a tenant paying rent like a stranger because she knew what greed would do if the truth came out. Silence followed her words. Then Kira's cry broke it like glass shattering. She said it was impossible that she and Nathan had cared for Jocelyn, that they had given her a place to stay. Jocelyn's voice cut through, quiet but unyielding. She reminded them that they had charged her $2,000 each month for a small room in her own house, that they had accused her of being a burden while living under her roof. Nathan cursed under his breath, pacing the room, his fists clenching, as if he could fight the truth into silence. Kira dropped into a chair, her face pale, her eyes wild as the weight of it sank in. Emily stood in the corner, her hands pressed to her mouth, her eyes wide with disbelief. She looked from her mother to the phone, realizing that her grandmother had been carrying the secret for decades. Jocelyn ended the call with a final note. She said this was not punishment, but consequence. Choices had been made, and now each of them would live with the results. The line clicked dead. The silence that followed was unbearable. Kira wept openly, Nathan muttered bitter curses, and Emily stood frozen in the doorway, seeing her family unravel in the space of a single phone call. The house felt like it was caving in under the weight of my truth. Kira's voice carried through the walls, raw and desperate, calling me heartless and cruel. She screamed that no mother should treat her daughter this way, that I had betrayed her trust and destroyed the family. Nathan's words were colder. He warned that I would be cut off completely, that once I stepped away, there would be no coming back. His tone held more calculation than grief, but the threat was sharp all the same. Not long after the phone rang again. Jerry's number flashed across the screen. His voice exploded as soon as I answered, calling me selfish and accusing me of shaming him in front of the family. I listened in silence until his tone changed. The moment he learned the sale price, his fury turned into curiosity. He asked how much I planned to keep and if I might consider investing in his new business plan. His sudden shift from anger to interest made my stomach twist with something between sorrow and disbelief. I told him plainly that my money was mine, that I had carried the burden of family needs for decades and was finished being a well to draw from. He tried to laugh it off, softening his tone, but I ended the call before he could disguise his greed in another request. My heart ached, yet my voice did not waver. I reminded myself that I had lived alone before, and I would embrace freedom again, even if it meant doing so with fractured ties. Later, Emily came to me with tears in her eyes. She pleaded for me not to let the anger erase the love that still existed, fragile though it was. She said she could not bear to lose both her mother and her grandmother to bitterness. Her words cut deeper than any threat because they carried no demand, only longing. I pulled her close and told her she would always have a place in my heart. I told her that nothing could take away the bond we shared, not even the choices of others. She nodded against my shoulder, and I felt her trembling slow, though the sadness lingered. As the evening shadows lengthened across the floor, I knew the lines had been drawn. The house no longer held me as a prisoner, but the cost of freedom was written in the silence of those who once called me family. Vindication and sorrow lived side by side in that silence, and I carried them both as I prepared to face whatever came next. The one-story house outside Savannah was modest, but it was mine. For the first time in years, I could walk through a doorway without fear of size or judgment. Silence was no longer sharp. It was gentle. I bought a soft recliner for my knees curtains that let in the sun and a good mattress. Simple things yet, they felt like luxuries after years of restraint. I began short walks with neighbors in the evenings. My body was not young, but caring for it gave me a sense of renewal I had long denied myself. The yard was small, yet it became my sanctuary. Roses bloomed by the fence, and a few tomato plants stretched toward the light. Digging in the soil made my hands ache, but it was the ache of life returning, not the ache of being diminished. Watching new shoots push through the dirt felt like my own quiet rebirth. I set up a trust for Emily so she could study journalism without debt. She had always carried a bright hunger to tell stories that mattered. Signing those papers was easier than any other decision I had ever made. It was not about escape this time. It was about planting something for her future. When she visited, she studied me as though she barely recognized me. She said I looked lighter. I told her it was peace. Then she shared something I had never known. Kira had grown up with fear etched into her. Jessie was always working, and I was always focused on Jerry. Kira felt invisible, terrified of being left behind. She clung to money as if it could fill that emptiness. Her confession stung. It did not excuse the cruelty, but it explained the shadow behind it. Pain twists people into shapes they were never meant to be. Boundaries became my way of surviving. They were not walls to punish, but fences that let compassion breathe without being crushed. One evening, Emily and I sat on the porch, sweet tea in our hands, watching the Georgia sky bleed orange and violet. She leaned into me and the world felt still. I told her that a home is not about walls or deeds. It is about respect, and respect is something you cannot rent. The cicadas hummed, the roses swayed, and my heart was calm. I had learned that freedom was not the absence of pain, but the choice to live beyond it. At last I was home.